Bands sometimes cause a stir after a show, right? Maybe some trash hotel rooms, controversial comments, normal stuff.
Yeah, par for the course sometimes.
But what happened to this Mexican band after a concert in Jalisco? Well, it's landed them in a whole different league of trouble. We're talking the U.S. State Department getting involved.
Oh, really? What happened?
Their visas got revoked. Just like that.
Wow. Okay, that's serious. It's fascinating, isn't it? How one single thing, a band putting an image up on a screen during a gig, can just spiral. And suddenly it's this international incident touching on, well, everything from free speech to culture to national security.
Exactly. And that's what we're digging into today. We've got news reports covering this whole mess, and our mission here is to really unpack it.
Right.
We want to get into what exactly happened, why the reactions were so strong both in the U.S. and Mexico, and, what this whole thing tells us about a musical genre that's just exploded in popularity.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Okay, let's get into the incident itself. The band is Los Alegres del Barranco. The concert was in Jalisco. What exactly did they put up on that screen?
So they projected the face of a very, very well-known drug cartel boss, Nemesio Ruben Oseguera, better known as El Mencho.
El Mencho, okay.
And it wasn't just his face, the image was like layered over a background of flames. Made it pretty dramatic.
Flames, got it. And the band, they're from Sinaloa, right, which is also significant in the cartel world.
Definitely. Sinaloa has its own long, complicated history with cartels.
And we really need to stress who El Mencho is. He's not just some local thug. He's the leader of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, the CJNG.
Yeah, a hugely powerful and notoriously violent organization. He's arguably, one of the biggest figures in that whole world right now.
A major player.
A major player. And this cartel, the CJNG, it's not just seen as a criminal group by the U.S. The Trump administration actually designated them as a foreign terrorist organization a few years back.
Terrorist organization. Okay, that changes things, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That designation gives the U.S. government a lot more tools, sanctions, legal avenues. It explains why they'd react so strongly to anything seen as supporting or glorifying the group.
Right.
And there's more context, too. Our sources mention this ranch in Jalisco, linked to the cartel. Authorities found human bone fragments there. Clothing, shoes, grim stuff.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So projecting the leader's face, especially over flames, given that background, it's heavy.
Definitely puts the image in a much darker light. So, okay, they project this image. What was the immediate reaction at the concert in the crowd?
Well, this is interesting. The reports say the crowd applauded.
Applauded, really?
Applause. Now, that could mean a lot of things, right? It's complex. In places where cartels have a lot of sway, there's sometimes this normalization, or maybe even fear. Doesn't necessarily mean genuine support.
Like acknowledging the power that's there.
Could be. Or just the shock value. But regardless of the crowd's reaction, the official response wasn't applause. It came pretty fast.
And it came from both sides of the border, starting with the U.S. What was the specific action they took?
Like you said up top, the big one was revoking the visas for the band members. Los Alegres del Barranco. No more touring in the U.S. for now, basically.
And it's confirmed by Christopher Landau, right? He used to be the U.S. ambassador to Mexico.
That's right. He actually posted about it on X Twitter. He made his views pretty clear.
What did he say? His perspective seems pretty important here, given his background.
Well, Landau basically said, look, he believes in freedom of expression, but that doesn't mean there aren't consequences.
Okay.
He specifically mentioned not needing to provide a welcome mat, his words, for people who extol criminals and terrorists.
Welcome mat. Yeah, that's pretty direct.
Very direct. And coming from a former ambassador, someone who knows the U.S.-Mexico relationship inside out, it carries weight. He understands the sensitivities around the cartel issue.
So he's drawing a line. Free speech is one thing, but praising designated terrorists crosses it, in the U.S. government's view.
Exactly. The U.S. Constitution protects a lot, but it's not unlimited, especially when it bumps up against national security concerns or support for groups labeled as terrorist organizations. The visas getting pulled shows they saw this as falling outside protected speech in this context.
Okay, so the U.S. reaction was clear. Visa revocation, essentially blocking them from performing there. Let's pivot to Mexico. What happened on their side?
Mexico's response was also pretty significant, and it came from different directions. First off, prosecutors launched investigations.
Investigations, plural.
Yep. In Jalisco, where the concert happened, and also in Michoacan.
Why Michoacan?
Apparently, there were reports the band projected the same images during an earlier concert in a city there called Uruapan, So they're looking into that too.
Okay, so potential legal trouble in multiple states. What kind of charges are they potentially looking at in Jalisco?
The main focus in Jalisco seems to be this charge of promoting violence. It sounds like if they're found guilty, they could face up to 6 months in prison.
6 months, wow.
And
That's serious for projecting an image. Is that common?
Well, it raises questions, doesn't it? Where's the line between displaying something and actively promoting violence? It could set a precedent.
Okay, so legal investigations. What else? Any other actions from Mexican authorities?
Oh, yeah. The governor of Jalisco, Pablo Limas, he didn't mince words. He announced a statewide ban on any musical performances that glorify violence.
A ban on the whole genre or just specific acts?
He framed it as banning performances that glorify violence. He specifically said violators would face fines and possibly criminal charges. He even said, of course it's possible to ban this kind of music. It signals a much harder line, at least at the state level in Jalisco.
So the fallout was fast and pretty wide-ranging. We heard some of their shows got canceled too.
Yes, definitely. Several upcoming gigs for Los Alegres del Barranco were axed. One town apparently cited a lack of municipal permissions, which could be, a convenient excuse.
Right.
And that show in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is scheduled for April 4th. Our sources say it wasn't officially canceled, but ticket sites were showing no tickets available.
So the visa revocation likely made that one impossible anyway.
Almost certainly. It really shows how the U.S. and Mexican responses are kind of feeding into each other here.
Did the band members themselves say anything? Any comment on the visas or the investigations?
Not much, really. The accordion player, Pablo Moreno, apparently gave a super vague response when fans asked online about the visas.
What did he say?
Just thanked them for the support and said, everything is fine.
Right.
Which clearly isn't the whole story.
Yeah, sounds like they're keeping quiet, maybe on legal advice.
Could be. Or maybe just trying to lay low given how controversial it's become.
Okay, so this specific incident is making waves. But, like we hinted at earlier, it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It plugs right into the whole bigger conversation about narco corridos.
Absolutely. That's the crucial backdrop. This whole controversy flared up right when Mexican regional music, including narco corridos, is having this massive global moment.
Right. You see artists like Peso Pluma, Fuerza Regida, Natania Cano. They're huge, not just in Mexico or the U.S., but everywhere.
Exactly. I mean, get this. Peso Pluma was the most streamed artist on YouTube globally in 2023. More than Taylor Swift.
Wow. Okay. More than Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
That really puts the scale of this popularity into perspective. I knew Mexican regional music was gaining traction, but that's staggering.
It is staggering. It shows this isn't some niche underground thing anymore. It's a global renaissance, as one source called it.
But that global fame comes with a spotlight and a lot of criticism, especially directed at the lyrics in many of these narco corridos.
That's the core tension, isn't it? The criticism is often that these songs, well, they romanticize cartel leaders. They paint them as these almost folk heroes, Robin Hood figures.
Which is obviously problematic, given the reality of the violence.
Deeply problematic for many people, yeah. Especially victims of cartel violence or people living in affected areas.
But then there's the other side, right? The argument that these songs are just reflecting a harsh reality.
Exactly. That's the counter-argument you hear a lot. That for many young people, particularly in certain parts of Mexico, the cartels, the violence, the allure of that lifestyle, it is their reality.
So the music becomes a way to talk about it or process it.
Possibly. Some argue it's a form of social commentary, reflecting the environment, the lack of opportunities, the power structures they see. It doesn't necessarily excuse glorification, but it adds complexity.
It's definitely not black and white.
Yeah.
And this debate isn't new, right? There have been attempts to ban this music before.
Oh, yeah. Several Mexican states have tried banning public performances of narco corridos over the years. Nayarit was the latest, just back in February, even before this Jalisco incident.
And Jalisco's governor just announced his own ban. Makes you wonder if these bans actually work. Do they curb the music's influence or just push it underground?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Sometimes banning things gives them more allure, that forbidden fruit effect.
And it's not just about lyrics. There are real dangers involved. Artists have received death threats, haven't they?
Yes, absolutely. Some big names have had to cancel concerts because of credible threats from cartels, presumably unhappy with how they were portrayed or maybe caught in rivalries. It shows the real power and danger lurking behind the music scene.
A complicated situation. Even within the Mexican government, there wasn't always agreement on how to handle it, was there? Didn't President Sheinbaum initially lean against censorship?
That's right. Earlier on, President Scheinbaum had suggested maybe the better approach was promoting regional music with more positive or socially acceptable lyrics rather than outright bans, kind of a promote the good rather than ban the bad idea.
But this incident with Los Alegres del Barranco seems to have shifted her thinking.
It really appears so. After they projected El Mencho's face, her tone hardened considerably.
What did she say then?
She publicly called for an investigation into that concert and stated very clearly, you can't justify violence or criminal groups. Full stop.
So a definite shift towards a tougher line, even at the presidential level.
It suggests maybe a growing consensus, or at least increased pressure, to take a stronger stance against anything seen as glorifying these groups, especially when it's so blatant.
Okay, so let's try and tie these threads together for everyone listening. What are the really key takeaways here? What's colliding in this situation?
Well, you've clearly got this clash between freedom of artistic expression, what can a band show or sing about, and then these major concerns about cultural impact and national security.
Right. Music isn't just entertainment. It shapes culture, reflects reality, but it can also, arguably, promote dangerous ideas.
And then you have the international dimension, the U.S. response, the visa revocations, directly impacting the band's livelihood, alongside Mexico's internal legal and political responses. It's all interconnected.
It really forces you as a listener to think about all the different angles. You've
Yeah.
got the band, what were they thinking? Then the governments, U.S. and Mexican, making these big moves.
And the fans. Why does this music resonate? What does it mean to them? And then society as a whole grappling with cartel influence.
Yeah. And the consequences for Los Alegres del Barranco have been, well, pretty dramatic and fast. Visas pulled, investigations, canceled shows.
It sends a strong message, doesn't it? That authorities on both sides of the border are drawing a line when it comes to what they see as endorsing or glorifying these specific criminal organizations.
So, just to sum up our deep dive here, a Mexican band projects a cartel leader's image. Boom. U.S. revokes visas. Mexico launches investigations, talks bans. And it all feeds into this bigger ongoing debate about narco corridos, their massive popularity, and their controversial content.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to chew on.
Go for it.
Given how popular this music is, and acknowledging that it does, for some, reflect certain difficult realities, what are the best ways for societies to handle content that seems to glorify crime? Is it outright bans like Jalisco is trying? Is it the U.S. approach of restricting access? Is it promoting alternative music like President Scheinbaum initially suggested? Or something else entirely?
There are no easy answers, are there?
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to balance safety and security with artistic freedom.
Not at all. This whole incident with Los Alegres del Barranco really throws those tough questions into sharp relief. It makes you think about culture, power, and where that line sits between art and the often brutal reality it sometimes depicts.